There you go. Welcome, everybody. My name is Pierre Calzadilla, and you're here with this great panel that we're going to have today. And we're going to discuss how to give consumers the data they need to make a decision. And we're going to talk about a lot of fun things. On the prep call to this, we had such amazing insights and such amazing ideas from this group. And I'm super excited to present them to you. These are some great leaders in our industry doing really creative work. So let's start with some quick introductions. I'm going to give you a quick 5-second, and I'll let them speak for themselves after that. We'll start with my man, Scott Hannaman. Scott's out of Toronto. He's with Sotheby's International Realty Canada. He's got over 30 years of experience.
Pierre, I think you got the wrong guy.
Sorry, I meant. Sorry, you're not. Scott's not.
I mean, I'd love to go to Toronto, but
I'm not there.
We'll take you, Scott. Rob. Come on over. Come over here.
I'm looking at Rob. Scott's in the other cold part of the U.S. called Seattle. He's in the Northwest with CB Bain. He's been in advertising for about 30 years. He worked with Disney, Reebok, the NFL, NASCAR, Warner Brothers. This is real media experience, real marketing experience from beyond real estate. Scott, welcome to the team. Anything you want to add?
Coldwell Banker Bain, I've been with them for about 6 years up here in the Pacific Northwest, and we just hit 8.3 billion in sales last year, so we're up about 24% from the year before. Yeah. It was a pretty amazing year in spite of everything that was going on, and we were just announced the #1 Coldwell Banker affiliate by AGC, so we're the top of the world right now. So it's not bad.
Congrats, my friend. Congrats. Well done. Next up is my good friend, Wendi Iglesias. I won't tell you how long I've known her.
Please don't.
It'll age both of us. But she is the CIO of Kai's, the Kai's company, not Keys, based out of South Florida. They're an amazing brokerage. She's been in real estate herself, and she's also been in the tech side of the business, which is really fun. And then one of her companies got acquired by Kai's, and that's how she became the CIO of Kai's. And Wendi, tell us about Kai's and anything else you want to add.
Absolutely. So Kai's is the largest brokerage in the state of Florida. We actually operate a couple of different brands, the two largest being the Kai's Company and Illustrated Properties. We have a little over 50 offices across the state and about 3,500 agents. Have to agree with Scott. Last year was an amazing year. We did about 8.2 billion in real estate services last year. And so just excited to be here today.
Well, thanks so much, Wendi, for coming. Next up from Toronto, from Ontario, I should say, not Toronto, Mr. Rob Love with Sotheby's International Realty Canada. He has over 17 years of experience in real estate tech, marketing, communications, and training. He's been involved on major national and global real estate franchise operations for agents and developers. Real deep experience in prop tech and real estate, and really just an amazing background. Why don't you share a little bit more, if you want, about yourself and a little bit about Sotheby's International Realty Canada?
For sure. Well, I've been in the biz for 17 years now in prop tech. Started troubleshooting mobile MLS listings on a Motorola Razr when I was 20 years old. So it's been a wild ride, obviously, and very proud to have joined the team last year. It was a record-breaking year for us as well. I'm sure that's the story in many places, but we did, it's hard to read here, but $9.48 billion in sales last year, which, across our 700 agents is pretty incredible and a significant year-over-year increase. And I am just so grateful to be a part of that arc and looking forward to building on that this year for sure.
Yeah, man, your market's on fire.
Oh yeah.
Fire. And next up, not last and not least, Mr. Sanjay Kuttemperoor. Sanjay, really, he's the founder of WikiRealty, but he has a great background as a real estate developer, lawyer, doing complex real estate transactions. He has done everything from acquisition to entitlement to development. But really, why he's here today is because he's the founder of WikiRealty, which is a market network for real estate professionals that really enables the connection of consumers to professionals based around location. And so, Sanjay, anything else you want to add? And welcome to the call today.
Yeah, first, thank you very much for allowing me to participate. This is going to be fun. Second, don't hold the lawyer part against me. I'm really a real estate guy first and foremost. And third, WikiRealty. I mean, WikiRealty was born really from the ashes of the Lehman Brothers debacle. Zillow and all these tech companies, Facebook, we're basically trying to disintermediate the local professional real estate realtors and loan officers. Our view of the world is that local professionals will always be part of the process. So we are fully automated marketing technology that helps them connect directly with consumers, top of the funnel, so they can compete with big tech and then own that consumer throughout the whole process and look like the neighborhood expert, et cetera. On the consumer side, we are helping them better understand neighborhoods and connect with the best real estate professionals that they find online. So thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. And my partner in crime is Ataya. Ataya is a rock here on the Local Logic team. She's a great amount of experience working at Move, Realtor.com in the US. She's worked with brands across the US, servicing them with all their real estate and tech needs. Ataya, anything you want to add as my co-host here today?
I'll be here and ready with the questions and answers.
Great. Thanks so much. Cool. I'll tell you a little bit about Local Logic while we're here today. This will be the only commercial that you'll get today. Bottom line is location's hard to understand. That's what we're talking about today. It's hard to measure. It's hard to compare. And what Local Logic has done, and I'm not going to go through all these things, but we've quantified location and packaged it in a way that people can make easy sense of it. And we provide this data via APIs, via web tools, via a platform, and even PDF reports. So you'll learn more about this later if you want, but that's why Local Logic is here talking today. So thanks so much. So first question, off to the races. It's been a crazy couple years with COVID. I'm not going to pound that, bang on that drum right now, but we all learned something, and there's a lot of things that changed our business. So what lessons are you all bringing that you've learned the last few years into 2022? And we'll start with Wendi.
I think for us, Pierre, it's really that lifestyle is so key to the experience for a homeowner, right? So we've had obviously a huge influx of people moving into the state of Florida. And some of that, I think, due to COVID and just things that were going on and in their own areas with lockdowns and such. And so what we found is that the number one question was all around lifestyle. This is what I want to do, whether that's equestrian or that's, coastal lifestyle or, the arts and leisure, whatever that may be. This is what I want to do. Where should I live based on what I want to do? And so we've really taken a very strong focus on that and being able to, no matter where you are, whether you live here and you're moving just to a new home or whether you're coming here from somewhere else, really letting you understand the areas so that you can make the right choice.
Great. And how about you, Sanjay? Oh, you're muted, buddy.
I agree with everything that Wendi said. I mean, as we all know, picking the right neighborhood is 50% or better of the decision-making process for consumers. And even though we're in an online world information age, getting your arms around that neighborhood information is still pretty much of a fragmented, difficult process. So we really focus on sort of helping that consumer understand the neighborhood and the lifestyle using your Local Logic data, as well as some other things that we do to really sort of round out that decision-making process for them. COVID has underscored the importance of neighborhood because people are moving out of dense areas and into sort of more suburban areas, and they want their lifestyles more important, especially with people living and working at home.
How about you, Scott?
Well, I think that, obviously I agree with everything that both Sanjay and Wendi said, but one of the other things that I think the data that Local Logic is providing has helped us with, because our area has grown so rapidly and the prices have increased so ridiculously, that a lot of the people are getting priced out of areas that they thought they really wanted to be. And they don't realize that that same lifestyle is available in other areas that are really nearby. And so utilizing the information that's provided by Local Logic, we've been able to help our customers and kind of empower them to find not just the right home, but the right lifestyle, the entire, the whole package, in something that they can actually afford.
Yep. How about you, Rob? How's this affected your clients in Canada?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think as you're aware, we have such limited supply in places. And so people are looking for homes in areas where, as Scott mentioned, they might not historically have even considered. And so consumers want this contextual information, but I would really say, COVID, and again, not to beat on that drum, but COVID really did make a lot of people realize that where they live really does matter, because all of a sudden that condo owner downtown is now isolated and accustomed to a certain lifestyle, has become trapped. And so, now a lot of people are starting to migrate outside of the cities. Now there's a pushback, of course, now that COVID restrictions are kind of ending, but the idea being that consumers want this contextual information, they need this area information, and they will leave your website to get it. And that is the bottom line. So in this business, the agent they speak to first, it's still going to be the one they are most likely to do business with. And if you don't have that contextual information on your site, then consumers going to go somewhere else to get it. And that's just opening a door for them to, start a relationship with someone else.
Yep. And on our prep call, you gave such a good soundbite, and I'm gonna set it up for you here. You had said, yeah, really, it's not just about the data.
Yes, and this is a good point. Thank you. I should get back to this as well. It's not just about the data, because people think differently, but the reality is you really do need to curate the insights the data provides, because it's one thing to dump a bunch of data down on someone, but the reality is most of that is irrelevant to them. And when they see too much information, like anyone, their eyes are going to kind of glaze over and they're going to not know what to do with it. So for us, at least, those curated insights are really key for us. If I can take 20 data points and distill them down to 3 insights, that is far superior to me in my mind than having all those 20 data points all over the place.
100%, man, 100%. I mean, we obviously believe the same thing here at Local Logic. So as companies, you cover huge markets. You're covering a huge swath of Canada. You're covering, Scott's huge part of the Pacific Northwest, Sanjay, the whole US, Wendi, South Florida, data everywhere. How do you curate, and what have you learned in the curation process as you go forward to pick the stuff that you put onto your site? Let's start with you, Wendi.
Absolutely. So I guess the first answer is it's not easy, right? But we are, very happy with our partnership with Local Logic, because it has simplified it for us to a great degree. We really partner deep with Local Logic, and at this point have built out 700 neighborhoods throughout our area with unique local content. So kind of to Rob's point, when you just throw a bunch of data out there, nobody really understands exactly what that means and what it means to them, and it doesn't create a picture. And so through our partnership with Local Logic, we have written stories, if you will, about every neighborhood and what that really means to live in that neighborhood, and what's available to you, and what's the vibe and the feel of the neighborhood. And then we also use that and put that out to our agents and have them kind of go through and edit and give their thoughts and their insights based on their experience in the agent. And we curate the data back from our agents and our managers as well, and then combine that together. And now we're currently working on even allowing for consumer insights and consumers to kind of ring in on the neighborhood and how they feel about the neighborhood and what's most important to them. So it's not an easy process, but the resources are there. And I think that it's definitely worth it to paint that picture for your consumers.
How about you, Rob? You're a pseudo national company, but you definitely, Sotheby's International Realty, like Realty Canada, but you have a huge footprint regardless. Like how do you manage that?
Well, I think it starts with, we need to have sort of like accurate data across nationally as well. And this is particularly important for us because people really search for neighborhoods. Now they're looking in specific areas, like even where I lived, it's a neighborhood called Briar Park in Brantford. And we did a significant amount of research, which was, by the way, very difficult to do. Wish I had something like Local Logics at the time. But, for us, I think that we really kind of try and prioritize, because as Wendi mentioned, you can't do it all. And so we look regularly at the reports we run. We see the highest demand searches on our website, the areas on our website, and we try to prioritize content creation for those pages and build out those location and neighborhood pages sort of one at a time or in a batch at a time. This is really not about sort of like one and done. This is an iterative process. You need to have agility. You need to see where the demand is. And if you have consistency over time, time, you know, there's a whole bunch of other benefits that compound for you, including things like SEO and organic traffic. Yeah, so really for us, it's really critical that we kind of focus on the areas that our customers are telling us they're interested in.
Yep, 100%. You know, Sanjay, you're running a national portal. Well, and more than that, it's actually more than a portal. It's also a plugin. Oh, my cat decided to jump on my desk. Say hello to the world. Hello. You know, like, how do you guys manage that and creating all that content?
So, I mean, we have a pretty interesting approach that really revolves around meeting the customer where they are at. I mean, it's sort of multi-pronged. You have to have information on your sites and on your sort of online presence so that when they find you, you have valuable information there, but you also have to meet them where they are, which is on social and all of the listing portals, like it or not. And we focus on the fact that, you know, the consumers have a very short attention span. I mean, I think what's the rule of thumb? You have like 3 seconds to get their attention. So we focus on what we like to call snackable content, right? Short bites of content that grabs the consumer's attention. Once you grab their attention and you get them to click through, then you can give them more information. So we actually have copywriters in-house that on a very hyper-local level, we write local content that's unique to every agent. No two agents get the same content, which helps with engagement, right? It's not the same content that's given to 20 different agents. So you get a consumer that sees interesting content in Sunrise, Florida, right? And then they'll click through. Once they click through, they get to read a short, but, you know, beefy article, you know, but that article also has your local logic data incorporated into it, property listing data. So these landing pages contain a lot of sort of great information that once you get the consumer's attention with that bite-sized information, then you draw them in and you give them more data, keep them in your ecosystem.
That's great. And Scott, I think you have a lot of lessons you've learned here, I think, in your processes. Maybe you can share with us what you guys are doing in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, we've tried several different approaches in the past, and we found that the best engagement that we've gotten has, you know, been through videos that we used to produce called City Skinnies. But, you know, COVID happened, and we don't want to beat that dead horse anymore, but it made it very difficult for us to get out and to, you know, produce these videos, which were extremely expensive and time consuming to produce. And again, you can't hit everywhere. You know, you just don't have the resources to get to every single neighborhood, to every single, you know, area that you're servicing. So that was really a big challenge. And, you know, the other caveat to producing video is that, you know, once your video is produced, 6 months later, that video may not even really be relevant, because things have changed so dramatically in the area. So, you know, having dynamic content, you know, this content that you guys are serving up through Local Logic is really important to us, because things change so rapidly in our marketplace. We are working on reintroducing a product that we developed several years ago called Street Beat, which basically is it's a very condensed version of a market report, but it also includes a lot of the local area information, you know, demographics, how many people are renting versus, you know, owning the home, you know, what kind of, you know, schools, walk scores, all that kind of interesting information. But the thing that worked well for us and what our clients really liked about it was that it was dynamic. So they could just keep that link, and every time they clicked on it, it was updating with current information. So, you know, those types of tools are what we want to continue working on and providing for our clients. And I think we want to kind of, you know, get into a nice relationship with Sanjay, because I really like the way he's providing information. You know, one other comment about the information is, and I think we've touched on it already, but making it digestible, making it so that people can just, you know, very quickly visualize what they're looking at and understand it. Because if you don't do that, you're going to lose them immediately. Nobody's reading lots and lots and lots of copy.
Yeah. I think I'm showing your site right now, Matthias. Everybody see that? Yeah,
I'm a little embarrassed about how we're using it right now, frankly, because we have, this is our first iteration. So the idea is to get it integrated, making sure that it works. And we haven't set up event handlers yet to start tracking, you know, different things. So we've got a little bit of work to do on our end, but our next iteration of this, I think, is going to be pretty impressive. So make sure you check back.
Yeah, great. And and this all takes work, like, and resources aren't endless, as sadly for all of us. So what's the impact? Like when you look at your experiences, Sanjay, you've invested in it, Rob, you've invested in it, Wendi, all of you have invested in location data. How has it impacted your business? Those that are listening and watching, they want to know that. That's backslide. So what's the impact of this content?
So for us, I mean, there's definitely been increases to traffic and significant increases to traffic. I mean, 20-25% increase to our traffic over the course of, year over year. So that has been amazing and wonderful. But I think the most significant is the conversion from unique traffic to lead. And then even more significant than that, the conversion of the lead to an actual prospect and ultimately closed transaction. And so I think that, as you start to provide more micro neighborhood data that really builds an experience for the consumer, it becomes stickier and they want to be on your site and they want to engage with someone. And they have questions that are raised as they look through what is there. And then that allows for that relationship to start, which then obviously converts into business and future business and an ongoing relationship. And so the impact is huge, especially if you'll really just kind of drill down and go through the work and continue the grind. It does pay off in the end. And I think really allows for a better impact to the customer in what your brokerage is for them and the data source that it is. And then also obviously a business driver for the associates.
Yeah, totally. Rob, in your experience, what have you seen happen, in your business as you guys have gone deeper on this location data?
Yeah, and let me share with you, because some of my background is a bit relevant to this. So we worked with national real estate brands, CB, ERA, EXP, Remax, Keller Williams, to build national lead gen websites. And so I tend to take a very macro view of lead generations and real estate websites. And for me, the stickier you can make the listing details page, which by sheer numbers is going to be the most a common page on your website, and it's going to be the page that generates the most number of leads. The stickier you can make that page, meaning the longer that you can keep somebody on that page, the more likely they are to convert from an actual visitor to a lead. And if you can even augment this using demographic data from Local Logic, like we're thinking through downloadable PDF reports, any kind of carrot you can kind of dangle on that page to increase your conversion is literally gold. So we are a big fan of obviously this demographic data, because for us, it really makes those listing details pages so much more stickier and so much more likely to generate a lead, which again is going to be the sort of fuel of our business.
100%. And Scott, Scott, let's go with Scott. Scott, like when, I think you've got this recently, what are you seeing in your business so far?
So, it's interesting. We haven't really had an opportunity to pay too close attention to the effect or the impact that Local Logic has had on our site overall. Because it's a little too early to tell, and we really haven't integrated it, completely. But the areas that we're seeing the biggest impact is the amount of engagement that we're getting on the heat map. So when somebody does a property search, they do a map search on our site, they click on the lifestyle, they can go in and, click the different lifestyles. That heat map has been a really good tool for us to kind of keep people engaged in just looking at different areas and finding out that, hey, wait a minute, I can't really afford to live in Queen Anne, Seattle. But if I look over at West Seattle, prices are a couple $100,000 cheaper, and it looks like the lifestyle is just as nice. So it's been a really interesting tool in that regard. We'll get you more data as we grow with this. We only started really using the product around November of last year. So it's a little early for us to tell, but so far we're seeing really nice results.
Yeah, let me show people what you're talking about here. Sorry, I just want to pull it up. So in this example, this is his heat map, and I'll take this off for a second in Seattle. And so if you're a consumer in a low inventory market and you care about coffee shops and quiet and transit, you start to see like clearly there's some pockets that are really better than others, but you also see that there's green out here and there's green over here that you may not have considered. And that's what Rob is talking about, is when you take the data and sort of visualize it, you're creating sort of new hooks for your clients to find opportunities that they wouldn't consider, before. So thanks, Rob.
And one of the
Scott.
things that we're going to be including in our, one of the things we're going to be including on the next iteration of this is kind of a guide for a first-time user to kind of walk them through, hey, this is what you can expect on our site, and this is how you use the tools. Because one of the things that we find a bit challenging, if it's not in an ecosystem that they're familiar with, they get confused and bored really quickly. Like the heat map, having the heat map, where it's green where everything is good and red where everything is, maybe not so great. That's almost an inverse of what you would expect from a heat map. So we're just going to make sure that we walk people through that.
Yep. Cool. Awesome, man. Sanjay, so, how do you apply this content and how is this impacting your business?
Yeah, to everyone's point immediately before, time on site, stickiness. I mean, we're creating branded content pages where all the calls to action lead to the realtor. And on those pages, we're incorporating your data. So when you get somebody to come into your ecosystem by looking at an article, and then they see all of your great neighborhood data, it just increases the time that they're on site and the time that they're seeing the name and the face of the realtor. And that just lends to being top of mind all the time, right? I mean, our goal is to help every realtor, I mean, maybe not a great analogy, become sort of that Geico lizard, right? So that when they're ready to transact, they think of you. Old advertising exec, what is the adage? Like you gotta have a newspaper advertisement out there 8 or 9 times before you register the back part of somebody's brain. And that's what we're trying to do. And once you register, you have to continue to give value, and the local logic data just does that for us all day long. And
ultimately, this all boils down to a relationship between your consumer and the agent, right? And as brokerages, as franchises, and as businesses, even you, Sanjay, you have the same thought of connecting of the professional, the consumer and the professional. How do you help your agents communicate location better in their day-to-day and make this real to them? Rob, let's start with you.
Yeah, no problem at all. So I think that, in terms of like helping our agents and sort of empowering them with this type of data, we really, for us at least, we have tools which we try to augment with some of this demographic data, and we're in the process of kind of building that out right now. So we have a seller report tool called Folio, which is very popular with our agents and with our sellers. It's a great tool for referrals, and it kind of tells you where the home, how the home's being marketed, where it's being advertised. But in addition to that, for the home seller to see market data, from other properties that are in and around that home. On the other side of the spectrum, we have buyer tools for agents to work with their buyers. And one of the things that we want to put in their hands is neighborhood reports, so that buyers can actually do something like watch markets and see what properties come up there. Because the reality is many people want to live in certain neighborhoods where we are, but because, and again, this is, I know it's a problem everywhere, but it seems to be very exacerbated in Canada and particularly Ontario. There is just so few listings. I read a report from a buyer this morning that apparently put a $300,000 offer on a $199,000 home and got outbid by $130,000 in a house in Windsor. That was going to be, their
wow.
Property was bought by some investor somewhere. So, this is the kind of competition that we're kind of dealing with. So consumers know that, they might not have the choice they were hoping to have with the budget that they have. And so, keeping an eye out on these neighborhoods and listings and making sure they know when listings come to market is obviously very important. And we want to augment that as well with demographic data and some of the other KPIs that you guys offer as well. I think it just makes the whole thing much more robust and nice.
That's great. Wendi, you guys are taking a really interesting, approach, and you're working on some awesome stuff down in South Florida. How are you helping your agents connect with your clients better?
We're really focused right now is on the mobile app, and specifically the agent branded mobile app that they're sharing out with their customers. And so we do the market reports and the neighborhood reports and all of those things as a part of our tool stack as well. But what our vision was when we started down this path a couple of years ago was that there would be an app for the consumer, branded for the agent, that would not just be about searching for their next home or searching for their next property, but would be an assistant to them during the life cycle of their home ownership, right? And so it would allow them to see their equity positions, understand what's going on in their neighborhood, understand the market trends in their neighborhood, and really bring in that data that we get from Local Logic and other sources, so that the consumer could make wise decisions about what they should be doing with their property and how they should be connecting from anywhere, like saving on their homeowner's insurance, to doing a refinance, to using their property as an investment and purchasing another, or selling that property, and moving on to their next property. And so we really wanted to be at the center of the whole life cycle, as opposed to being there when it's time to list or time to purchase.
That's golden, Wendy. And just this could be a whole webinar topic on its own, which is closing the loyalty gap. Right. And this is definitely a good weapon. That what you're talking about is an absolutely great idea to keep that consumer with you throughout the home ownership cycle versus just a transaction. So good on you guys. Sanjay, how about you? Like how are you helping your clients, ultimately use this data in a way that they connect with their consumers?
Yeah. So what, our thesis is that the real estate professional is the product, not the listing, right? And as you are the product, you have to make yourself better than every other realtor product out there. How do you do that? You do that by sharing all this great, valuable information and being where the consumer is. So I think the strategy of sort of combining what Rob and Wendy and Scott are doing, making sure they have great data and information on their own site, so when the customers visit them, makes all the sense in the world. And combine that with our strategy of meeting the customer where they are in different online sources, being on social and on Zillow and Trulia, is a win-win. And if you do that, you are going to dominate the marketplace. So we focus on that latter half, making sure that we take that realtor and put them where the consumer is with value-added content. We can, through the use of a Chrome extension, make sure they appear when consumers are searching on Zillow and Trulia, even though you don't want them to. Many do, as you know. And if you can be in front of them when they're searching on those portals, as well as on your own site, you've won. And I think the combination of our respective strategies will put realtors in a great position to compete, especially with big tech.
Yeah, I think, you had mentioned, and maybe, I'll just plant this for you. I think like one of the cool things you did was build a web extension for your consumer, and which sort of that agent can follow the consumer on the search on these portals, which I think is a great idea. It also incorporates local logic data, which is really cool. And it's great. I think it's a great idea and a great way to really keep that relationship and allow the consumer to sort of, be doing the searching that they want to do, but still stay connected, which is really awesome. Yeah. Great. And Scott.
So the area that we've, really kind of focused on working with the agents on this information is, obviously on their property detail pages, it makes them look like the area experts, which they are. And they already are the area experts. I mean, they really do know their areas quite well. But being able to work with the buyer's agents and, again, working with them on that heat map and explaining to them how they can use that tool with their clients and say, hey, listen, Queen Anne's probably out of your price range, but look at all these other amazing areas that we can go look at. And then, providing them with the listings and providing them with the information that they need. So, for us, it's a little early in the game. We don't have it quite as well established as Sanjay and Wendy, but it's something that we're looking forward to. And honestly, this panel's been very informative for me.
Yeah, it's great. That's what we want to do for everybody. If you're learning
it's been pretty fantastic.
I mean, you guys combined are doing over 25 billion in transactions last year. So I think it's a good group to listen to. So we're here towards the end, believe it or not. And let's do some wrap up and some takeaways. What are some takeaways that you can pass on to others as they consider how location data can impact their business? Rob, we'll start with you.
I think for me, it's really, you know, I always tout this as kind of my superpower, and everywhere I've been is that put yourself in the consumer's shoes, right? Think about how you would want to consume that data, and don't have it for the sake of having it, right? How does location matter to the consumer? You know, is this data useful on its own, or do you need comparing statistics, right? If you're going to be putting up some statistics, and no one really knows if that's good or bad, you should have some comparing neighborhoods, similar traits, or highlighting other neighborhoods that are similar to this neighborhood. Think about how a consumer would consume this information and what would be useful to them to keep them on the site a little longer. And this is really about how you curate, and obviously why you're curating. But really the second piece of that is always try to leverage some data for contact information, because this is the biggest challenge that I think everyone has here is you got so many visitors to your website, only a small fraction of those are going to actually convert into a contact. And so you need to do everything in your power to make that happen. And there's a great book called Atomic Habits. And I love the example they use, the aggregation of marginal gains. And I think that this is something that's really quite interesting. And it's just that when you have a goal and your goal is to generate listings, what can you do to move that dial 1%, 0.5%, you know, and things like this can help us move, and applying the data in unique ways can help us incrementally move that dial and get that consumer closer to converting to an actual lead.
So true, Rob. And that being in the startup, you know, I was on the brokerage side myself for years, but I've been the startup side of real estate now for 14, 15 years now. You know, there's never one magic bullet. It's incremental, you know, incremental improvements. Oh, this project moved it up 2%. This project did it 3%. This project made it 5%. Combined, now you got a 10% move, you know, but like if you need to seek those incremental wins and ship on a regular basis too. You can't just ship once a quarter or once a year. You have to ship every 2, 3, 4 weeks to keep that momentum going. So great point, Rob. I appreciate that. Sanjay, how about you?
I guess sort of my parting point would be, don't sell, right? Consumers don't like to be sold. Focus on delivering value so you can separate yourself from the competition. And how do you deliver value with all of this great data? Put yourself out as a neighborhood expert. People want to deal with people that they like and trust, right? They don't want to be sold. You develop trust and relationship by giving them information that's valuable to them, and then you form the relationship, and then you get new business.
Cool. Wendi, Scott, anything you want to add?
I mean, I completely agree with everything that's been said. And then I would say that, you know, in all reality, I think it's really about start, right? You have to start somewhere. So start and then listen. Listen to what the consumer says. Listen to what the agent says. Listen to all of the voices that are out there. And obviously you have to sift through that and find those golden nuggets, but then be ready to pivot, because where you start is likely not going to be where you want to end, usually is never where you want to end, but you've got to listen to the feedback and then pivot as necessary, and you get there.
While we wait for folks to, thank you so much, guys. This was fantastic, by the way. I really love it. I have another question for you all, which is unplanned, a new question. So get ready. But while we're waiting for that, if you're listening and you have questions for our great panelists, Rob, Sanjay, Scott, or Wendi, please.
I think
into Atalia.
Hey, I think Scott, maybe I missed it, but Scott, did Scott have a chance on the last?
Scott, sorry, man.
You know, I don't have a lot to add because you guys covered it really well, but there is one thing that I would add is that keep your information relevant. You know, because a lot of times we get information out there, we think we do it, we check the box, you know, and then it's up there for the next 3 years.
Right.
It just doesn't do you any favors when you do that. So keep your information relevant. You know, this dynamic data that's coming in through LocalLogic is fantastic because it's always current information. And that's really, really important. And, you know, consumers are fickle. It's a moving target. This, you know, there is, like you said, there's no silver bullet. You know, what works today may not work, you know, 6 months from now. So, you know, paying attention to what's going on and, you know, keeping track of where your successes are, I think is really critical.
Thank you for that, Scott. On that exact point, at LocalLogic, we were really focused lately on how consumers value sustainability and the climate. one of the ways that we've done this lately is we partnered with Climate Check. So Climate Check is now one of our partners. We're able to provide that to our brokerages. But we're also considering other aspects of sustainability and incorporating that into our products. Have you heard in your experiences, you're all over the US and Canada, are you seeing your clients, is the consumer asking for this yet? Are they coming to you and like wondering about these things? Are you getting any murmuring? We're seeing it on the developer side, like the real estate developer and the investor side, they are caring about this now. So just curious if the consumer is at the point where they're like picking location all and also thinking about their gas use or their environmental impact.
I can honestly, I bought in 2018, and I'll add a quick context here. We knew that this area or an area in Brantford had flooded previously, so I had to track down flood maps and talk to my realtor, and my realtor didn't know what was going on with the flooding, right? So I had to track down flood maps. They'd be showing me properties and I'd be like, I don't know, like the water was here. Like, I don't want to deal with that, right? If I can live somewhere that isn't in these floodplains, I'm happy. So that for me was actually a pretty big factor. And I can only assume for people as it gets more prescient with things like climate and weather events. And in BC, we had a heat dome, we had a wildfires, we had a, what do they call it? An atmospheric river. Terms for weather events I've never even heard of, and I lived there for 15 years. Yeah. And so I think this is going to become more and more to the forefront for consumers as sort of the media paints the picture, the reality of what's happening on the ground.
Yeah. How about you, Wendi? You're in South Florida. I mean, talk about flood zones. What are you seeing on this?
People just come here expecting to sink. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. No, I mean, I absolutely do think that it's something that people are starting to consider more and starting to talk about more, especially from the sustainability aspect of it. Maybe I don't hear too much in South Florida about climate other than, thank God, it's an average of 80 degrees year round. But definitely from a sustainability standpoint, we are starting to hear that more. We're starting to hear more about, traffic patterns and proximity to work and school and all of those sorts of things. So I think that it's important. I think honestly that being able to equip the consumer with all points of data in an easy to digest manner is great, because not everyone is interested in the same data points, but having it available and making it easy to digest is going to be important for everyone.
100%. Sanjay, Scott?
Yeah, putting on my real estate developer hat 25 years ago, I mean, the consumer has gotten a lot more sophisticated in their decision-making process is what we've seen from Wisconsin down to Florida and now California. Mother Nature and the impacts of Mother Nature plays an important role in where they live and work, because quite honestly, it affects their costs, right? Hurricanes in Florida impacts insurance, right? You've got zones in Los Angeles where you have to think about fire. So people are becoming a lot more interested in responsible development and thinking through sort of the long-term impacts of where they choose to live. Because at the end of the day, they believe it's going to impact their pocketbook in one way, shape, or form. And people are thinking more about that now. Yeah. I've seen that from the Midwest to the Southeast, now on the West Coast.
Last follow-up on this before we go to the questions that Ataya has, because I'm really curious about this. And I think this is a useful conversation. Yeah, Scott, do you want something to
add? I'm sorry, but I gotta jump in on this one. So up in the Pacific Northwest, and I'm sure Rob can attest to this, we're getting a ton of climate refugees from California. There's a lot of people moving.
Climate refugees, right?
They don't want the wildfires anymore. They don't want the excessive heat anymore. So the Pacific Northwest is fantastic.
I'm one of them.
And frankly speaking, it's a wonderful place to live and it's beautiful, but it is changing. The other part of the equation for us is that we have a tremendous amount of coastal communities, a lot like Florida. And, everybody wants to know, what's this going to look like in 10 years? And then, of course, sustainability is huge. We live in one of the most, it is the left coast for a reason. And so sustainability is a really big, it's a big topic of discussion out here. So I think those are really important pieces of information that you can give to your customers.
Well, I have a follow-up for you, Scott. We'll start with you because this is my quandary, and I think this is the industry's quandary. And I'm curious what your take is. Could we see it here at Local Logic, and we're building for this. So if there is curiosity, you should talk to us, by the way, after about what we're doing. But are your agents ready for this? Like, my experience is, and I'm sure you guys all know what I'm about to say to you, is people don't want red flags on their listings, or they don't want to have a listing that says, oh, this is a bad climate area, this is a fire zone risk area. Are we at the point where the cat's out of the bag and you have to provide the information before somebody else does? Like, what's your take on that? We'll start with you, Scott.
So our agents are trained from the very beginning, do the right thing every time, and being transparent from a transaction standpoint, I think is really critical. Giving somebody too much information too quickly doesn't always end well. We know that, but making sure that the agent is aware and making sure that the agent is in the know is critical. Because if they're all of the sudden in the crosshairs of their clients and they're like, how come you don't know this information? That's not going to bode well for them. They don't necessarily have to present the information and, oh my God, this place is going to be underwater in 3 years. But they can make subtle hints and suggestions, but as long as they're in the know, they're just that much safer.
Anybody else have a take on this, Rob or Wendi?
I have an interesting take on it too. I'll let Wendi go ahead.
Go right ahead, Sanjay.
I mean, I'm all for transparency because at the end of the day, the consumer is going to find out anyway. Yep. And if you're working with that consumer, you should be the one that lets them know first, because it's just going to make your stock look that much better, right? And if you don't know, you're going to lose a lot of credibility. So real estate's gotten tougher. The inventory's a lot smaller. You have to sort of fight for your piece of the pie, and giving the consumer first, knowing this information and being able to prepare to share it at the right time is what's going to sort of put you head and shoulders above the competition.
Wendi?
Absolutely. No, that's actually very similar to what I was about to say. Yeah. I think that fooling yourself into the idea that, hey, I don't want to put this information on my listing because it might have a negative impact. The internet has sailed, so everyone has access and you can find the data anywhere. So if your consumer is truly interested in that data, they're going to go and find it. And if you're not presenting it, then it's almost like you're trying to hide it to a degree. Now, that being said, I also don't think that, you put flashing banners across the listing that says flood zone, run fast, but I do think that you want the information to be there and be available and let the consumer digest that and then make the decision. At the end of the day, generally, property purchase is an emotional decision and it's about a lifestyle and where you want to live. But you still want that additional information. And I think it's our responsibility to make sure it's available.
Yeah, you guys are all fantastic, by the way. I love how you've sort of answered this question. I'll go a little bit different here, because I do think that as an agent, you do have a responsibility to put the seller's sort of best foot forward. Now, that doesn't mean concealing information, but what Wendi said really resonated with me. It's disclosing it at the right time, right? Because I think that, you're not serving your seller by necessarily opening up with this awful piece of information, or a piece of information that would, make them turn away from the property. You have a responsibility to put that property's best foot forward without being disingenuous. And it's a tough line to walk, but as an agent, you need to walk it. You need to figure out what that balance is, because at the end of the day, I do believe consumers have a right to know all this information, but I also believe you have a responsibility, if you get a listing, to work with that seller to put their best foot forward.
That's great. Great, guys. Great conversation. Ty, are there any questions coming in that we can pass to the team?
Yes. First one, actually, Pierre, could you show what it would look like on a broker's site, like the local content? How does the data look like on a broker's site?
I think I had one up already. I'll just do it. You guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So this is the heat map that we talked about earlier. This is a score on a property. We'll just click on this lovely home here. And then in this example, we'll go to the neighborhood. There it is, information. And this is now the client does control a bit here. And as you saw, WikiRealty actually uses our API to create their own user experience. So they're packaging it in different ways. So you do have, if we look at even Kai's, she's, they're doing more of a neighborhood level insight and scoring on different content. But on a listing level, which as Rob, had mentioned, is the #1 page of your site. This is the product that really, is most helpful immediately.
You can see it on our site too. So
Yeah, as well. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, no, I had you up earlier actually.
Just click on any of the listings there at the bottom. Yeah. You'll scroll down to the map there. Yeah. Now we give our agents the ability to use Google instead, depending on where. This is what I talked about, balancing, right? So we do give our agents the ability, if they so choose, to opt out of this map, but we opt them in by default. So, because sometimes when all those scores are red or real yellow, it's like not an ideal looking map, right? But at the end of the day, if you're buying a horse ranch, you probably are expecting not to have great access to shopping.
Correct. Exactly, man. Exactly. It's like the truth is, that's why I'm buying I don't want to be near anything. I'm really happy the shopping is zero here. Yeah.
But this is a great example of balancing those needs, right? Because we allow our agents to opt out of that, because for some properties, although this is accurate, it's not the first thing you want the consumer to see. And quite frankly, they should know that already if they're in the market for horse ranches. So we don't need to throw it in their face.
Yeah. Great.
And then I have a follow-up question for you, Pierre. Is it hard to install?
Well, it depends on how hard you want to make it. We do provide it as an SDK. As a matter of fact, actually, I realized I wasn't sharing my slides earlier, but there are a few ways that you can install the products.
The SDKs are very easy. I have a developer who uses them. He loves them. The SDKs are awesome.
Thank you.
Fantastic product.
Well, there you go. Rob answered for me. And that's the web tool bucket. And then the APIs, which was Sanjay's using. And then we have other options which aren't usually used by the brokerage side, but these two tools, and the web tools cover like location, the neighborhood area, the listing, the maps. That's all under the web tool bucket.
So then another follow-up question is about the data. So how is the data updated?
Great question. Depending on the data source, they have different sort of timelines. Like demographics don't change that quickly, so those are more like once a year to what basically like lesser time lapses, or like things like I don't know, like parks are like biannual and things like so they all have their own timeline. POIs are way more frequent because they change so quickly. But what's interesting is the scores don't change that fast. So an interesting aspect is like if a neighborhood is a 10 for restaurants, 2 restaurants close, likely to be replaced by two restaurants. So that 10 is not going to fall to like an 8 tomorrow because 2 restaurants closed. It's going to stay at 10 more than likely because the restaurants usually get replaced by restaurants. So every data set has its own timeline. And we do take feedback on every listing for the scores and the content. And that does go to the team and helps us prioritize our stuff. Like in Toronto, we added last year 150 neighborhoods. Like we redrew 150 neighborhoods for that had just evolved over time, and like we became more known as a search field. So like everything is subject to some level of change.
And then I think it also is probably important to just point out that they're not manually having to update this data.
No,
they're providing
automatic. All three
automatic.
Yeah.
Okay, and then another question is, what's the pricing like for these solutions?
It varies on your size of your company and the scale. Like full countries, full country could be like $2,000 a month starting price. Smaller regions could start at 500, 250 if you're one little agent somewhere, right? So, and depending on the platform you work with, you might have some other ways to get our products, because we do work with like Inside Real Estate and other folks. Some products are exclusive. So like Wendi has something that is an exclusive license for Florida that's different than our general license, right? So that might be best to say, talk to our team. So email Ataya If you have any questions, if you mention this webinar, you will get delayed billing up to 20% off your pricing. So that would definitely, be the best way to answer this question. But yeah, you can expect, we can right size this product because of the APIs and SDKs. So I will tell you that almost 100% of our customers grow with us over time. So you can just find a way to solve a problem, solve a pain today, get the entry point that matches your budget. And then as we validate that we impact your business, you can grow with us. So.
Okay. And then our last question is, how does this help with the SEO?
Maybe I'll let the folks answer here. Any context you want to share on how this content helps with SEO?
I mean, I'll say it right out the gate. It doesn't necessarily help with SEO, but it does provide additional context. I would say on its own, it's not a silver bullet, right? It's going to complement your SEO strategy, but consistent content, building out like information on neighborhoods. I believe you even have some products where you can subscribe to content that Local Logic creates. Those will have a bigger impact on your SEO. For this product, for us at least, it might be different for other people. The primary reason for us adopting this product is really about keeping people on the site for longer and giving them more to kind of chew on in terms of listings and neighborhoods. Yep.
And that's a local content, Wendi.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, and I would 100% agree with Rob. And so we're one of those companies that started with Local Logic and kind of grew along the way. And initially it was just about ingesting the API data and bringing that in, to our listings. And then as we grew, we moved to this more exclusive product for the state of Florida that is unique content that no one else has for their sites and no one else is displaying on their sites. And so that was a little bit more of an SEO play for us. And we have seen some benefit and some nice benefit in moving to that. So it really boils down to how you're engaging Local Logic and how you're implementing as far as what the effects on the SEO are.
Yeah, and I'll share one little tidbit that I do know, and I'm sure you folks do too, that Google doesn't just rank your content, but they rank your engagement. And so one of the things that our product does is when somebody comes to your site and they increase their engagement, Google feels that you've rewarded the consumer because they've stayed and done more. So that means that the search result was positive. And so therefore you're more likely to get shown. So if your bounce rates are high and your usage is low, then that will also hurt your SEO besides you not having content. So I will plug that. I do know that our products increase the usage and the engagement, which is a halo effect of SEO. You still need to have content too. But if you have content and no engagement, you're penalized. So you do need the balance of both of those things. I don't know if Scott or Sanjay had anything to add there for SEO.
I agree 100% with that.
Okay,
Yeah.
That's it for our questions.
There is one thing on SEO that I'd like to add. This content is a really good opportunity to actually advertise and drive traffic to your site. We're talking about SEO and we're talking about people organically finding your site, but driving the traffic to your site, I think, is really an important factor too. I think that probably has a bigger impact than SEO does overall. And I think that has a huge impact on your SEO. So the more, it's kind of a pay to play world we live in. And I think the more advertising that you do and the stronger the messaging, I think the better off you're going to end up long term.
I think, when you think about a conversion engine, I'd say the real estate sites are a conversion engine. So, you got to put gas in. So you got to attract traffic, whether you pay for that traffic or not, that is a strategy, but your engine needs to be as efficient as possible at converting that traffic. So there's two equations here. And when I talk to regions about this as well, those are the two things. You can drive as much traffic as you want, or you can increase your lead conversion by 1%.
Right.
You're going to have the same impact.
Right. Great. And that's a good mic drop there. Thank you so much, Rob, Sanjay, Scott, and Wendi for your time. Mattia, thank you for helping me out. Great content today. We'll be chopping this up and also creating some sound bites to share. If you registered for this, you'll get the recording as well. Thank you so much. Look forward to this. Look forward to catching up again in the future and seeing how things are developing with you all. Have a fantastic day, and thank you everybody who came to the webinar.
Thanks, everyone. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Cheers.
Bye.